Hey everyone, it's your buddy back again with another exciting fanfic. What if Naruto time traveled to the third great ninja war, Naruto x Kushina? If you enjoy this story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more fanfics like this. Now, let's dive right into the fanfic. A figure could be seen walking through the desolate land that was once the glorious Uzu no Kuni, Whirlpool country. Destroyed building, dead trees, skeleton, that was the scenery where the figure was heading. The figure was clearly a man in his early 20s, he stood at 6 inches 0, had shoulder-length spiky blonde hairs with two locks that fell down the side of his face. His face was well-defined and totally devoid of baby fat with 3 whiskers mark on each cheek that give him a feral look. He had cerulean blue eyes that hold maturity and power. He wore a long-sleeved mock turtleneck black shirt underneath a long-sleeved black trench coat with the kanji long sanren, Ryu Sanin, on his back. He wore fingerless black glove, Anbu black pant with many pocket and a kunai holster on his right tight wore back ninja sandal. He was Namikaze Uchiha Naruto, son of the late Yondaime Hokage Namikaze Minato and Uchiha Sayuri. He was also the apprentice of the Gama Sanin Jiraiya and the youngest member of the Densetsu no Sanin and the soon-to-be Rokudaime Hokage. Naruto was walking among the desolation with a far-away look. Flash of a red-headed woman flashed through his mind and his eyes showed sadness. In his mind, in a grassy land a being with 9 tails sighed while its slitted blood-red eyes were downcast looking at the ground. It's been 15 years already, and he never forget. It sighed and looked at the dark sky and to think that I'm partly responsible for this mess. I should have been stronger. Damn you Madara Uchiha, thought angrily the 9-tailed fox. Indeed, 20 years ago the Kyuubi no Kitsune, the stronger of the 9 Biju attacked Konoha under the influence Madara's Mangekyo Sharingan. The Yondaime Hokage, Namikaze Minato sealed the beast in his own son in an attempt to give his son the power needed to defeat the one that controlled the Kyuubi. It's only 10 years later when Naruto learned to use his own Mangekyo Sharingan that he used it on the Kyuubi, releasing him from Madara's curse. Shaking his head, Kyuubi chose to engage the conversation with his host. Naruto, are you alright? Asked the fox, clearly worried. Naruto snapped from his stupor. Yeah Kyuubi, sorry I kinda spaced out I guess, said Naruto in a monotone voice. Kyuubi frowned. He didn't like to see his container brooding. He reminded him dangerously a certain last loyal, Uchiha. Stop it Naruto, it doesn't suit you to brood. You clearly remind me of Uchiha Sasuke, said Kyuubi, hoping that his container stop his mental torture. Naruto frowned. Being compared to the emo bastard didn't sit well with him. He grinned sheepishly. Sorry about that. It's just that, you know, said Naruto a little downcast. Kyuubi sighed and nodded. Yes, I know Naruto, you miss her don't you? Asked Kyuubi. Naruto only nodded and sighed. Listen to me Naruto, I know that she was in a sense your first love, but dwelling in the past won't do any good to you. You have forgiven what the villagers had done to you when you were younger, so why not move on and settle down? Inquired Kyuubi. Naruto sighed. He knew that the fox was right, but even so. I know Kyuubi, but I want to see for myself what her life was before she came to Konoha. I think that it's only like this that I can move on, explained Naruto. Kyuubi nodded and smiled. At last he understood the message. Very well Kit, I'm glad that we are on the same thought, said Kyuubi. Naruto nodded and grinned. Suddenly a devious smile appeared on Kyuubi's face. Also, you have already someone awaiting your return, said Kyuubi while grinning like hyena. Naruto raised an eyebrow. What are you talking about Kyuubi? Asked Naruto, not really catching it. Kit, don't tell me you didn't realize a certain Anbu purple-haired kunoichi, that always release some pheromone when you're with her? Asked slyly the old perverted fox. Meanwhile Naruto tried to understand what the fox meant when his eyes widened in realization and a blush crept to his cheeks. Why you mean Yugao-chan? Kyuubi just nodded. Wow, I never thought that she has the hot for me. I always thought that I was no more than a little brother to her, said Naruto surprised. Kyuubi nodded and smiled. That's not really surprising, you became the Konoha's #1 bachelors after all. It's been nearly 2 years that she tried to hint you but you as dense as ever. I even thought once that you were a Tinker Bell, explained Kyuubi with a snicker. Naruto eyebrows twitched and a tick appeared on his forehead. Well thank and I'm happy you are interested in my sexuality but it's fine, said Naruto clearly annoyed. Kyuubi struggled to refrain his laughter. But, you are right, we were always together and we get along pretty well. I will certainly ask her out when I return and see where this is going, explained Naruto. Kyuubi smiled happily. You made the right choice, Naruto. She will be a fine mate for you, and I'm sure with time she will heal your broken heart, thought Kyuubi while a single tear fell from his face. Meanwhile Naruto grew frustrated. It's been 2 hours that he began to search through the country and he found nothing. He decided to add some extra help. He bit his thumb and made several hand seal. He slammed his hand on the ground and shouted, Kuchio's no jutsu invocation technique. 4 huge poof of smoke appeared in the clearing. When the smoke cleared, 4 10-feet green dragons with pale slitted yellow eyes appeared. The 4 of them bowed before Naruto. One of them spoke. Naruto-sama, how may we serve you? Asked the dragon. Naruto smiled. Greeting you 4. I want the 4 of you to scatter and search any clue on the woman Uzumaki Kushina. If you find something, flare a wave of chakra, commanded Naruto. The 4 dragons nodded and flew away. Naruto jumped on a roof, crossed his arm and closed his eyes, thinking at his first encounter with her. Naruto snapped from his reminiscence when he felt a flare of chakra from one of his dragon. He jumped in the direction of the chakra. He arrived at the designed location in 5 minutes and spotted his dragon looking at a nameplate. Naruto landed next to him. The dragon looked at him. Naruto-sama, is this what you were searching? Asked the green-clad dragon, nodding to the nameplate. Naruto knelt in front of it and ran his finger through the plate, cleaning the dust with it. The name on the plate was revealed and Naruto couldn't help but smile. Indeed, on the plate was the kanji Uzumaki Kushina. Uzumaki Kushina. Naruto turned to the dragon and smiled. Excellent work, Ruchi. You and the other can dispel yourselves and say hi to Ryujin for me, said Naruto. The dragon smiled and nodded. Thank you, Naruto-sama, I will tell him. By your leave, said the dragon before vanishing in a poof of smoke. Naruto looked ahead in the direction of the manor that the nameplate pointed. Naruto entered the garden and looked in awe at the size of the mansion. It was basically a concrete block with a stucco exterior and a combination of lath and plaster and wallboard inside. Architecturally, it was remarkably unified, with Mediterranean arches and a real red tile roof. Windows and sliding doors are top-of-the-line insulated thermal pane glass with a coating to cut heat transmission. Snapping from his stupor, he entered in a wide area that was certainly the entry hall. He looked around and spotted faint wisp of chakra coming from a door that led to the basement. Naruto opened the door and looked at the stair that led to the darkness. Be careful, kid, I sense that something is off, said Kyuubi. Naruto nodded wordlessly and climbed down the stair. He arrived in an empty room. Naruto stared at the ceiling but found nothing. He moved to the center of the ceiling and moved to leave, but when he was about to move, the ceiling glowed green and pattern began to emerge from the wall that spread throughout the ceiling. Naruto wondered what was going on when he heard Kyuubi shout at him. Kit, get away from this room now, shouted Kyuubi, but the warning fell in a deaf ear as it was too late. Naruto was completely absorbed by the seal. 2 figures appeared from the shadow. One was clearly a man that wore a long black cape that covered his entire body. He had long white hair with a Hanyo mask that covered his face. The second figure was clearly a female with long brown hair and shining yellow eyes. She wore a white robe that stopped at her knees. The man turned his lead and looked at the woman. Are you sure that was wise? Asked the man with a gruff voice. The woman looked at him and smiled. Yes, if any being deserve a second chance, that's these 2, stated the woman as she stared at the fuming seal. The man grumbled, if you say so, but with his arrival alone the history will be radically changed, stated the man. The woman nodded. I know, that's one of the reasons that I sent him in the past. I want him to correct several things and avoid several deaths, said the woman. The man snorted. Hey, the last time I checked it was me, not you, that ruled over the deads, said the man, annoyance evident in his voice. The woman smiled sweetly at him. A little too sweet. Don't be a smartass, after all he will send you plenty of corrupted soul, and I know that you crave for it, said the woman in a sweet voice. The man next to her began to sweat. Oh okay, you win. I will return to my realm, until next time, Kami, said the man as he vanished in a swirl of black flame. Kami continued to stare at the ceiling. To bad, I can't make that boy my plaything even in God's standard. He's sxy as hell, these ripped abs and especially his. Last time I checked he was at least 8-inch, thought Kami with a perverted giggle and a huge blush on her face. When she finished her perverted rant she vanished in a flash of light. Elsewhere, Naruto groaned as he awoke from his slumber. When he stood up a massive headache came up and Naruto had to hold his head in his hands to ease the pain. When the headache began to decrease he heard a voice in his head. Kit, Kit, are you alright? Asked Kyubi worried for his container. Yeah Kyubi, I'm fine, what happened? Asked Naruto, still a little sore from his travel. Kit, you were seduced by the Kokugan Kotai Giho, time transplant technique. It's a forbidden technique that normal human can't use. Kyubi paused in order to let the information sink in. In short, we were sent to the past, finished grimly the old fox. Naruto froze at this information. What? Kyubi, how do we return in our time? Asked Naruto, but fearing the answer. Kyubi sighed and dropped the bomb. I'm afraid it's not possible, Kit, it's a one-sided travel, said quietly Kyubi. Naruto cursed under his breath, but now it wasn't the time to mourn. He took a breath. Okay, first we must determine in what period we landed, said as he returned in his commander tone Naruto. Kyubi smiled, seeing that Naruto took the situation in control without panicking. Naruto looked around. He was clearly in a forest, the trees were all around him, but one thing was sure, that it wasn't a forest from Hai no Kuni, fire country. There were mountains at the background, meaning that he was either in Kaminari no Kuni, lightning country, or in Tsuchi no Kuni, earth country, but from the moisture it was no doubt that he was in Tsuchi no Kuni. The air was too dry to be in Kaminari no Kuni. When he was about to take the direction of Hai no Kuni, he felt several chakra signature nearby and he decided to see what was going on. Several miles away, Sumini Kenji was not happy at all. The day began not that bad but quickly worsened when the Tsuchikage ordered him and his team to patrol the border of Kusa no Kuni, grass country. At first nothing much, but there he encountered a Chunin team of Konoha under a Jonin. Again nothing particular, but again to screw more his day, it happened that this Jonin is none other than Namikaze Minato, dubbed the Konoha no Kuroi Senko, Konoha's Yellow Flash, the only man in Iwagakure's Binko book that had the mention SS ranked flea on sight. Ultimately all his teammates were killed by the Kuroi Senko or by the silver-haired Chunin, but in fact his day has gotten better when he captured the only female of the group. A perverted grin appeared on his face. Oh yes, he could have some fun. She had brown hair, a beautiful face, and he could feel that her boobs were quite developed for her age. She was quite gorgeous. Kenji landed in a clearing. The sky began to darken, meaning that it was getting late. He set up a camp and lit up an fire. He looked at the girl with a sick grin and decided to get his prize. Rin was not having a good day. She was captured and she could only blame herself for that. She began to stir up and open her eyes. Her eyes darted around to find that it was dark, meaning that it has been several hours that she was captured. Her eyes landed on an Iwa Nin that looked at her with an evil glint in his eyes. She tried to move, but her hand and feet were tied by chakra wire. She struggled, but nothing. It's meaningless, you can't cut this wire now, said Kenji, standing up, pulled a kunai and moved to her. He knelt down and ripped her shirt and under bra with his kunai. My, your tits are quite big. You hide your game very well, said Kenji with a lecherous grin. Rin looked at him fearfully, fully understanding what he was doing, and she couldn't prevent him to take away her innocence. Tears streamed on her cheeks. Oi, no need to cry, sweetie, you will like that, said Kenji with a voice filled of lust. Kenji put a hand on Rin's breast and began to fondle it. He moved his head to her other nipple and soused it. Rin's eyes shut in disgust. She couldn't believe that she was groped and she will be raped by this pigs. Kenji finished and unbuttoned his pant, letting his member fully erect at Rin's sight. She widened her eyes in fear. Kenji smirked and moved his member down her mouth, forcing his way down her throat. With Naruto. Naruto jumped from tree to tree at high speed. When he felt that the chakra signature were near, he landed on a tree and looked at the clearing. His blood boiled and his eyes flashed from blue to red at the sight in front of him. Apparently an Iwa Nin was raping a girl none older than 14. He had his member in her mouth, meaning that he didn't penetrate her yet. Deciding to not wait until he's finished, he picked a 3-pronged kunai and launched it behind the Nin and vanished in a yellow flash. Naruto reappeared behind the Nin in flash, stopping his fun. When the Nin was about to turn around, he felt a humongous pain at his chest. Looking down, Ed saw that he was pierced by an invisible blade. The last thing he knew was a voice that whispered in his ear. Futon. K's no Soto, Sword of Wind, enjoy your time in hell, bastard, said the voice before the nothingness claimed him. Naruto snarled as he removed the body of the dead man and looked at the girl, who looked at him with wide eyes. He moved next to her, checking for any injuries. Finding none, he sighed in relief and removed his trench coat and put it around her. SSS sensei, you've come to save me. I'm so sorry, stuttered the girl, who began to sob hysterically into her sensei chest. Meanwhile Naruto was quite confused. Why she called him sensei? Oi, Kit, she remind me that girl that was on your father's genin team photo, said Kyubi. Naruto looked at her. He recognized the brown hair and the two mark under her eyes. Naruto's eyes popped out from their socket. You are right Kyubi, she's Rin-san. She was in my father's genin team with Kakashi-sensei and Obito-san. But, that mean? Naruto trailed before his eyes widened even more. If it was possible. Kyubi, we returned to the Iwa Konoha war before Two-san became Hokage, that mean? That I can finally meet him. Thought Naruto before tears poured from his eyes. Kyubi could only smile at the sight of Naruto reunited with his father and mother. If someone deserved to be happy, it was him. Meanwhile Rin stopped crying and drifted to the blissful unconscious. Naruto smiled at her and tried to remove her only to whimper in her sleep. I guess that she's shocked from what happened to her. I can't really blame her. I guess I will sleep next to her this night. Thought Naruto before drifting to the sleep as well. The next day, Rin awoke from her slumber only to find that she was surrounded by warmth. Image from the previous night flooded through her mind and tears threatened to fall from her eyes once again. She opened her eyes only to look into cerulean blue eyes that reminded her the eyes of her sensei, but these eyes contained something different. The man smiled at her. Are you alright, Rin-san? Asked her sensei. She stood up carefully, pulling the trench coat closer to her body and take a good look at the man in front of her. His cloth were different from the one that her sensei wore. His eyes and hairs were the same colors as her sensei, but he had 3 scars on each cheek, and at least but not the last, he didn't wear any headband. It was clear that this man wasn't her sensei. She took a defense position and glared at him. Who are you? What have you done to me? Said Rin in a threatening tone, releasing some ki. Naruto brushed the ki off and smirked. It is a manner to treat the one that saved you? Asked Naruto with his eyebrows raised in amusement. Rin looked at him when the rest of the event flashed through her mind. She relaxed her stance and bowed to Naruto. I'm sorry, sir. It's just that you look like my sensei, and with what happened last night I guess I'm a little shocked, explained Rin. Naruto waved his hand, dismissing her apology. There are nothing to apology, Rin-san. It's quite normal, said Naruto. Rin looked at him suspiciously. How do you know my name? Asked Rin with an edge in her voice. Naruto cursed inwardly. He was caught and he has only one shot to regain her trust. You have to score, kid, or this could become rather troublesome, said Kyubi. Naruto only nodded and took a breath. It's because I know you, Sensei Namikaze Minato. My name is Namikaze Naruto, explained Naruto while Rin's eyebrow rose up in surprise. That's not possible. Sensei told us that he was orphan, stated Rin, glaring at the man in front of her. Naruto nodded. Indeed, he's orphan. We have the same father but a different mother, stated Naruto. Rin's jaw dropped at this revelation. But how? Asked Rin, shocked beyond belief. Naruto chuckled at her reaction. When Ni-san's mother died from childbirth and my father couldn't keep Ni-san, fearing that his enemy find him, so he let him in Konoha. After that, father fled to the Temujin continent in Numa no Kuni, marsh country, where he encountered my mother, explained Naruto, praying that she buy the lie. Rin looked at him, totally flabbergasted by her sensei's brother. Kyubi whistled at his container performance. I must say, kid, that your comedian's talents are impressive. If you quit being shinobi, you could always turn actor, joked Kyubi, earning a snicker from Naruto. I guess that I'm just awesome, said Naruto, full of himself. Kyubi just rolled his eyes at his container while mumbling something like baka blonde, earning a smirk from Naruto. Well, it's certainly something that I couldn't think possible. To think that sensei has a brother and a hot by any mean, said Rin while thinking the last part. Naruto sighed in relief as he was out of problem for now. Naruto looked at her and took a scroll and handed it to her. Take it. In this scroll are spar cloth for you. While I don't mind you keeping my trench coat, but I need it, said Naruto while smiling at her. Rin nodded, took the scroll and retreated in the wood in order to change her clothes. 5 minutes after that, she returned fully dressed in a standard shinobi cloth. Naruto smiled at her. I guess the first thing to do is to find your teammates, suggested Naruto. Rin nodded and took off through the trees. Elsewhere, 2 figures speeded through the trees. One was a boy with spiky black hair, goggles that protected his eyes, black shirt with the Uchiha clan crest on his back, black shirt and blue ninja sandal. He was Uchiha Obito. The second was a boy from the same age, with spiky gray hair, a black face mask that covered the bottom of his face, blue t-shirt, blue shirt and blue ninja sandal. He was Hatake Kakashi. Kakashi looked at Obito. Obito, calm down. Charge-in won't rescue Rin, it will only kill us, said Kakashi. Obito glared at him. I know, Kakashi, but I want to rescue her. Damn it, shouted a frustrated Obito. Kakashi sighed. I know Obito, I also want to save Rin-chan, but like I said, it won't help us to charge blindly, we need a plan, explained Kakashi. Obito nodded and stopped. When they were about to discuss of their plan, a barrage of boulder fell on them. Quickly jumping away, Kakashi was about to do hand seal when he heard Obito yell. Kakashi move, yelled Obito, but before Kakashi could do anything he was pushed away by Obito. Kakashi could only watch in horror as the boulder was about to crush Obito. Someone yelled, Rasengan, spiraling sphere, the boulder which was about to crush Obito exploded. When the smoke cleared, Naruto stood over Obito in all his trench coat glory. Rin landed next to Obito. Obito, are you okay? Asked Rin. Obito looked at her and his eyes widened. Rin, you are okay? Shouted Obito. Rin smiled and nodded. Kakashi appeared next to her and pulled her in a bone-crushing hug. Rin-chan, you are okay? You scared me to the death, damn it. Shouted Kakashi as tears fell from his eyes. Rin was stunned. Kakashi was scared for her. Did he really care for her? She blushed and returned the hug and cooed to Kakashi's ear. It's alright, Kakashi-kun. Sorry for worrying you, whispered Rin to the emotional boy. Naruto could only smile at the sight. Kakashi told him once that Rin was his first love and that he always regretted that he never told her that he loved her. Naruto looked ahead and saw the Iwa Nin appeared in front of him. So the Konoha no Kuroi Senko grace me from his presence, snarled the Iwa Nin. Naruto chuckled. Too bad for you, I'm not the Kuroi Senko, stated Naruto. The Iwa Nin frowned and raised an eyebrows. Obito and Kakashi stared at their sensei, in wonder, what he was playing at. Rin looked at her teammates and sighed she should explain to them later. So who are you then? Asked the Nin. Naruto flashed a predator smile before answering. I'm your executioner, stated Naruto. He dropped into a horse stance and began to gather his chakra. His body glowed with chakra and 2 chakra dragon wings spread from his back. He said, Shiroi Renge no Ryu, White Lotus of the Dragon. The 2 Chunins and the Jonin stared in awe as his chakra level exploded and the ki flooded from him, paralyzing the Iwa Nin. Even the children sweated from the amount of ki, even if it was not directed to them. The Iwa Nin could only stare in horror at the monster in front of him. Naruto blurred, leaving only an after image and a crater where he previously stood, and reappeared behind the Iwa Nin for 3 seconds only to vanish again and to reappear before the Konoha Nin. The glow in the wing disappeared and Naruto relaxed. This is over, stated Naruto. The Konoha Nin stared at him questionably when they heard a scream. They looked at the Iwa Nin and choked their own saliva at the sight. The Iwa Nin had 7 holes in his body, each at a vital organ emplacement. The Konoha Nin looked at Naruto in awe and a hint of fear. All to the credit for the technique Shiroi Renge no Ryu goes to Wandering Maverick. Naruto looked at them, flashed one of his infamous foxy grin. Well, he wasn't that tough, said Naruto in a cheerful voice. The other sweat dropped at him. He just killed an Iwa Jonin in only 3 seconds and said it like it is nothing. But before they could press the matter, a lone figure landed in front of them. He had spiky blonde hair, icy blue eyes and the standard Jonin attire. He was Namikaze Minato, the Konoha no Kuroi Senko. He looked at his team and saw that they were okay. He sighed in relief and looked at the last figure. His eyes widened at the sight of the man that looked exactly like him. Meanwhile, Naruto had to use all his willpower to not jump at his father and hug him to the death. Minato looked at Naruto and narrowed his eyes. Who are you? Are you friend or foe? Commanded Minato. Naruto smiled at his father. It's been a long time since I wanted to meet you, Namikaze Minato, said Naruto. Minato frowned, picked a 3-pronged kunai, launched it to Naruto, who narrowly avoided it. Minato vanished in a yellow flash and reappeared behind Naruto, a kunai at his throat. I ask again, who are you? Asked forcefully Minato. Naruto chuckled. Minato narrowed dangerously his eyes. Rin decided to intervene, but when she was about to speak, Naruto vanished in a yellow flash and reappeared behind Minato, a kunai at his throat. Minato was shocked beyond belief. This man just used his Hiraishin no Jutsu, Flying Thunder God technique. His team were as shocked as their sensei and stared at the pair with wide eyes. Naruto just smiled and removed his kunai from his father's throat. Minato turned around and looked at the man before him with wide eyes. What how? Asked Minato with a shocked voice. Naruto just sighed and looked at his father. I guess I must explain everything to you, but not here. Sorry, but this something that only you must know, said Naruto as he walked off to the trees. Minato frowned but nodded. He turned to his team. Stay here, that's an order, said Minato in a stern voice. The team nodded as Minato followed Naruto. Okay Rin-chan, what is this mess? Asked Kakashi. Rin sighed and began to explain. With Naruto and Minato. Minato arrived in a clearing. He found Naruto waiting for him in the center of it. He quickly jumped and landed in front of him. Minato eyed the other blonde carefully. So are you going to tell me who you are? Asked Minato. Naruto nodded and sighed. Yes, but first of all, you must know that what I'm about to tell you will certainly shake you, but all is true. Stated Naruto. Minato only nodded, eager to understand what was going on. My name is Namikaze Naruto. Stated Naruto. Minato widened his eyes and was about to speak, but Naruto cut him off. The reason because I look like so much is because I'm your son. Said Naruto, not really sure what reaction would have his father. Minato froze. This man in front of him was his son. What is this joke? He's like what, 20-year-old? It's totally ridiculous. You must be joking, right? Stated Minato dangerously. Naruto sighed. He knew that this will be a pain in the SS to explain. I'm not joking too, San. I'm the son that you will have in 3 years. I come from the future. 23 years separate us from this future, explained Naruto. Minato looked at him like he's grown a second head. You know that your story has grown more and more absurd, right? Stated coolly Minato. Naruto sighed again and looked at Minato straight in his eyes. I'm not joking. I was traveling throughout Uzu no Kuni when I came across an odd seal and get wrapped by it. I awoke here and found your student Rin being groped by Iwa Nin. I killed him. After that I saved your other student Obito from being crushed by a boulder and killed another Iwa Nin, explained Naruto. Meanwhile Minato listened intensively. He cursed under his breath hearing that his student was almost raped by these scum. Minato bowed his head slightly. I thank you for saving 2 of my student, but I'm sorry, but I don't really believe that you are my son and that you come from the future, stated Minato in a neutral tone. Naruto only shook his head. He held his hand and formed a Rasengan in his hand. Minato's eyes widened. The fact that I know both the Rasengan and the Hiraishin no Jutsu might be a sufficient proof. After all, only those from your blood can use the Hiraishin, explained Naruto. Minato was speechless. This man knew both his praised technique, that mean only one thing. Why, you are really my? Asked shakily Minato. Naruto smiled and nodded. Hi, San, I'm really your son, said Naruto before walking to Minato and wrapping him in a big hug. It has been 20 years that I'm waiting the day to finally meet you San, whispered Naruto. Minato looked at him questionably. What do you mean? And if I'm your father, who's your mother? Asked Minato. Naruto only chuckled. Aren't you dating someone currently San? Asked Naruto, amusement in his voice. Minato looked at him, a slight blush on his cheeks while scratching his head with a goofy grin. Well, I've gone to 1 or 2 dates with Sayuri-chan, but I don't think this is serious between us. Naruto just chuckled and closed his eyes. When he reopened them, they weren't blue anymore but blood red with 3 black tomo in each eye spinning around the pupil. Minato only gasped. Sharingan, whispered Minato. Naruto only nodded and smiled. Yes, I'm yours and Uchiha Sayuri's son, stated Naruto. Minato could only nod dumbly. The 2 of them sat in an uncomfortable silence before Minato decided to break the ice. So, Sochi, can you tell me about you? I have a son but I don't know anything about him, asked innocently Minato. Naruto visibly winced, but he knew he had to do it. Minato looked at his son's eyes and saw a myriad of emotion flash through them, but he recognized some of them: pain, hurt, loneliness. Minato awaited, dreading the answer. First, San, you must know that I'm not a normal human, stated Naruto. Minato looked at him questionably. I'm what you call a Jinchuriki, the power of the human sacrifice. I house the most powerful of the 9 Biju, the Kyubi no Kitsune, explained Naruto. Minato gasped. He heard of the Jinchuriki. They were for the most used as mindless weapon to commit slaughter. The other were feared and hated. Many lost their mind because of that. Minato felt his anger boil in his gut. Who dared to transform his son and wanted to use him as a weapon? Sochi, who did this to you? Asked seriously Minato. Naruto looked grimly at his father and dropped the bomb. You, said quietly Naruto. Minato froze. He himself condemned the existence of his own son. What was going on? Naruto, seeing that his father was in an internal turmoil, decided to ease him. Before you get too worked up, know that you didn't seal the Kyubi to transform me in a mindless killing machine, stated Naruto. Minato looked at him and was about to speak, but Naruto interrupted him, saying to not cut him. Minato nodded. As I was saying, the Kyubi no Kitsune attacked the village under a powerful genjutsu. Because the Biju can't be killed, you did the only thing that could stop him. You sealed it inside me at the cost of your own life, your last wish that I was seen as a hero, but like you should have remarked, it's not what happened. Naruto took a breath and continued. Ka-san died during the childbirth, so the reinstated Sandame placed me in the orphanage. For 3 years I was treated like crap, starved, beaten, and the list is long. At the age of 3 I was kicked from the orphanage and I lived in the street for 6 months until the Hokage brought me an apartment. Minato could only shook in rage, what these fools have done to his son. Konoha had fallen pretty low. But when I was 4 someone saved me from this hell, she was my savior, my angel. She was Uzumaki Kushina, she was like a sister to you and Ka-san, but these bastard of elder told her that I died during the sealing, so she took a long-term mission only to find me 4 years later. In a sense she was my first love. Minato could only smile sadly that his son found someone special to him. After that I lived the happiest year of my life, my Sharingan awakened so, Ka-san's sister-in-law Uchiha Makoto helped me with it, she was the only Uchiha, with her eldest son that didn't hate my guts. Minato frowned, but when I was 5 ninja attacked both Kushina-chan and me, I was badly wounded while Kushina-chan was no better. It's at this moment that these bastard decided to rape her. Spat Naruto disgust, Minato shook in anger. When they were about to do it, I lost it and tapped in Kyuubi's chakra. I killed them, but in a last ditch of effort one of them plunged a kunai in Kushina-chan's heart, killing her. At this point tears fell freely from Naruto's eyes. Minato looked at his son sadly. It's when my Mangekyo Sharingan awakened, but after that I was totally broken. If it wasn't for the Sandame or Makoto-san I could have committed suicide, stated grimly Naruto. Minato frowned but couldn't really blame his son. After I graduated from the academy and placed on a team under Hatake Kakashi with Uchiha Sasuke, the last Uchiha, because one of their clansmen slaughtered the entire clan minus Sasuke and Haruno Sakura, a fucking fangirl. Explained Naruto. Minato chuckled at the fangirl part. After that I learned the way of the ninja. I lifted the curse that was on the Kyuubi, gaining a precious ally and friend. Kyuubi smiled widely. After that Sasuke defected Konoha to gain power and I was apprenticed by Jiraiya. Minato's head perked at that and smiled. He wondered where the old pervert was, but looked like he finally took the things in hands. I found the sacred scroll of the dragon summon and became the new Ryu Sanin that replaced Orochimaru. When I left for Uzu no Kuni I was about to become the Rokudaime Hokage. Finished Naruto. He took a long breath and looked at his father. To say that Minato was shocked would be an understatement. He couldn't believe that the villager were as cruel as that to his son, but he swore to himself that he wouldn't let that happen a second time. For all that, Sochi, forgive me, I'm the one that condemned your existence, pleaded Minato. Naruto looked at his father and put a hand on his shoulder. There are nothing to forgive, San. You did what you have to do to protect your village. While I think your blind faith was rather foolish, I can't blame you, explained Naruto, earning a nod and a smile from Minato. Okay, San, I think it's time to return to your team, said Naruto. Minato nodded and was about to take off when a question popped in his head. Wait, Naruto, shouted Minato. Naruto looked at him. What are we going to say to the village and my team? We can't say that you come from the future, explained Minato. Naruto nodded at his father and smiled. I already explained to Rin-san that we had the same father but a different mother, that when Ni-san's mother died from childbirth and my father couldn't keep Ni-san, fearing that his enemy find him, so he let him in Konoha. After that father fled to the Temujin continent in Numa no Kuni where he encountered my mother, explained Naruto. Minato could shook his head at the ingenious lie that his son told. So, did we have to prepare ourselves for the Kyuubi attack in 3 years? Asked Minato, slightly worried. Naruto shook his head. Nah, I don't think. My presence altered the course of time. Obito shouldn't have survived this mission, so the future that I told you about is lost now. Not that it isn't a good thing, explained Naruto. Minato frowned but nodded and walked off to his team. With Minato's team. Damn, that's an unexpected revelation, shouted Obito. His 2 teammates could only agree with him. Kakashi looked at Rin with a worried look in his eyes. Rin-chan, are you sure that you are okay? I mean, with that bastard did to you? Asked Kakashi in a shaky voice. Rin could only smile fondly at Kakashi, seeing that her love interest is worried for her, make her happy. She took his hands. I'm fine, Kakashi-kun, thanks to Naruto-san. But thanks for your concern, said Rin before leaning forward and kissed Kakashi on his cheek. Kakashi's face became beet red and nearly fainted on the spot. Rin giggled. I hope that we don't interrupt something, asked a voice behind. They turned and looked at the grinning face of their sensei and Naruto. Rin and Kakashi could only blush a new shade of red while trying to disappear in a hole. Obito, Minato and Naruto only laughed at the couple discomfort. Minato turned to his son. So Naruto, what are you going to do? Do you want to join Konoha? Asked hopefully Minato. Naruto nodded and grinned. Yeah, I will join Konoha. But I want to leave for Uzu no Kuni in 1 month, stated Naruto. The other looked at him in wonder, only Minato understood why he wanted to go to Uzu no Kuni. Very well, we will discuss about that with the Hokage. Team, the mission is done, we returning to Konoha, commanded Minato in his Jonin mode. The other nodded and took off. 1 week later, when Naruto and company arrived at Konoha, they received many stare from the villager wondering who was the man that looked like Namikaze Minato. Arriving before the Sandaime, Minato handed the report to the Hokage and dismissed his team. The Sandaime Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen, was surprised to find someone who looked exactly alike his soon-to-be Yondaime. When Minato's team left the room, Minato and Naruto proceeded to tell everything to the Sandaime. Needless to say that the old Hokage was shocked to the core. Well, in 40 years of shinobi career I must say that this new, said the Hokage lighting up his pipe. So Minato, you told me that your son know both your Hiraishin and Rasengan but has also the Sharingan? Inquired Hiruzen. The pair only nodded. Sarutobi grinned inwardly. Minato had already inflicted severe damage to Iwa. If Konoha had a second Kuroi Senko, then the war was in the pocket. He turned to Naruto. Tell me, my boy, what are you skill? Asked the old Hokage. Minato was also interested since his son didn't tell him anything. Naruto nodded. Well, I have 3 affinities, that are Raiden, Futon and Suiten. I'm a master in the 3 of them and my Suiten manipulation is superior to the Nadaime. Sarutobi's and Minato's widened at that. The Nadaime was the greatest Suiten user of the shinobi world. I use the lost taijutsu art of the Shiroi Renge no Ryu, White Lotus of the Dragon. I'm a seal master and I control 8 of Kyuubi's tails. I wiped out an entire village in this state. At this statement the 2 men's eyes popped out from their socket, but Naruto wasn't finished. I'm the holder of the sacred dragon summon scroll and I mastered their senjutsu. I also created several variation of the Rasengan. Finished Naruto while grinning at his father expression when he said variation of the Rasengan. What do you mean several variation of the Rasengan? Asked Minato, clearly interested. Naruto grinned and held his hand. A Rasengan appeared in his hand. Naruto created a Kage Bunshin without hand seal. The clone began to work on the Rasengan that grew nearly 3 times the normal size of a Rasengan. The 2 older men could only stare in awe at the display. It's called Odama Rasengan, Great Spiraling Sphere. Its power is 3 times stronger than a normal Rasengan, stated Naruto. Meanwhile Minato analyzed the Rasengan and frowned. Naruto, this Rasengan is highly unstable, how do you maintain the flow? Asked Minato. Naruto smiled. Yes, that's why I used a Kage Bunshin to stabilize the flow, explained Naruto. Minato smacked his forehead. Why didn't he think of that? Of course, when a Kage Bunshin is created, an amount of chakra is split between the original and the clone. Minato admitted, this was ingenious. Naruto dismissed his Rasengan and created another. This time wind swirled around the ball of chakra, creating 3 blades of wind taking the shape of a shuriken. Minato had to pick his jaw from the ground. His son had completed his Rasengan. Nah, Naruto, this is, stuttered Minato. Naruto smiled and nodded. Yes, san, it's my futon. Rasengan, wind release. Spiraling sphere. I completed your Rasengan, but it's work only with fire and wind. The other elements are unstable, useless, or meaningless, explained Naruto. Minato nodded and Sarutobi was highly impressed. Do you have another variation, Naruto? Asked Sarutobi, eager to see another S-rank jutsu. Naruto nodded. Yes, but I won't demonstrate it, it's highly destructive. I wiped out a battalion of Kumo Nin with it, said nonchalantly Naruto. The other occupant of the room had to pick up their jaw of the ground. It's called Futon. Rasenshuriken, wind release. Spiraling shuriken, it's a boosted version of my Futon, Rasengan, explained Naruto. Sarutobi meanwhile nearly had an orgasm. Ha had an exceptional shinobi at disposition, the war was in the pocket. Minato beamed in pride, his son clearly surpassed him in all the domain. To think that him and Sayuri engendered a shinobi as strong as him, he couldn't help but grin like a hyena. Hokage-sama, I would like to register as a Konoha Jonin, but I want to leave for Uzu no Kuni in 2 weeks. The country will be attacked by Iwa and I want to save someone very precious to me. Asked Naruto. Sarutobi nodded, picked an headband with black strip and handed it to Naruto, who gratefully took it and strapped it on his forehead. Very well, Naruto, but I want Minato and his team to accompany you. I don't want bad surprise, commanded Sarutobi. Naruto nodded and smiled at the old Hokage. I'm grateful to you, Hokage-sama. I would like an apartment if it's possible, asked Naruto. Minato frowned. No sense, Naruto, you'll live with me at the Namikaze mansion, exclaimed Minato. Naruto looked at him and smiled. He bowed and left the room to unpack his things. Wait for me, Kushina-chan, I will be the one to protect you this time, thought Naruto. Minato and Sarutobi looked at the retreating Naruto and Sarutobi spoke. You really have an impressive son, Minato, said Sarutobi. Minato smiled and nodded. Indeed, too bad that the future Konoha didn't deserve him, said Minato. Sarutobi frowned but nodded. Yes, indeed, I won't let my beloved village rot like that, said with conviction Hiruzen. Minato smiled and left the room. Sarutobi stood up and looked at his village. Yes, I won't let this pigs of the council corrupt my village, thought the old man. The fall of Uzu no Kuni. Naruto stood with a smile in front of the Namikaze mansion. In the future he moved in after his heritage was revealed. Unfortunately, the mansion was destroyed 3 years later when Uchiha Madara launched the released Sanbi no Kyodai game, Three-Tailed Giant Turtle, upon Konoha. The mansion was located not so far from the Hyuga compound in the Uchiha district, but it wasn't nearby either. The mansion was not modest but not too fancy either. The mansion was exactly like that in the future. The garden was filled of grass just large enough to be able to serve as a training field. I didn't know that you liked my home to the point to stare in awe at it, said an amused voice behind Naruto. He turned around and found his father standing a few feet away with a grin on his face. Naruto smiled. No, it's just that no matter in what era we are, this place is still the same. It's look like it's frozen in time, said Naruto with a dazing look. Minato looked at his son. Even if Minato was his father, he couldn't help but wonder who was exactly Namikaze Naruto. Minato was very good at reading the human's emotions, but Naruto was like an unbreakable shell that couldn't be read. The only moment when he could read his emotion was when he explained what happened to Uzumaki Kushina, meaning that the subject was very touchy for him. Minato snapped from his musing when Naruto moved to the door, bit his thumb and spread some blood on the Chishio Fuin blood seal that was present on the lock of the door. Minato was about to yell at Naruto to get away when the door opened. Minato frowned. He forgot that the seal let enter those who are from the same blood that him. Naruto turned and looked at his father. Is there a problem, Ni-san? Asked Naruto. He called Ni-san his father, knowing that even within the property, the walls had ears. Minato frowned slightly but understood why his son called him like that. Indeed, Konoha was not only famous because it was the strongest village, but because it held the biggest gossip club of all the elemental nation. His date with Uchiha Sayuri was already known not even 2 days after it, much to the Uchiha clan dismay. Not that he cared though. There are no problem, I just spaced out, I guess. Go inside, I'm behind you, stated Minato. Naruto nodded and walked in. The inside hadn't changed very much, only the photo's frame had changed. Only the one with Jiraiya and the one with Minato's genin team were present. The one with Naruto's mother weren't exposed yet. Minato walked behind, closed the door and activated the Nametsu Fuin privacy seal. He turned his head and stared at Naruto. Naruto, I want to clarify several things from what you told me in Tsuchi's forest, stated Minato. Naruto only nodded and sat in the living room on the sofa. Minato sat next to him and began. You said that you replaced Orochimaru as a Sannin. Not that I really like him, but what happened to him? Inquired Minato. Naruto frowned. He didn't want to explain everything about the future to his father, but it was inevitable. Kyuubi had already scolded him about that. Saying too much about the future could have dramatic drawback. Naruto sighed and looked seriously at his father. Listen to San, normally I shouldn't tell you about this, but you already know a lot about the future. You won't certainly be happy with that, but the event that I will describe mustn't be changed too much. Too much change in the timeline can do more harm than good. Understood, finished sternly Naruto. Minato grimaced but nodded. Naruto took a long breath. The reason because Orochimaru wasn't a Sannin anymore was because, after that the Sandaime nominated you to the title of Yondaime Hokage, Orochimaru took it very hard. He wanted to be Hokage to continue his human experimentation without suspicions, stated grimly Naruto. Minato gasped and his face became white sheet. Human experimentation? Asked Minato, clearly shocked. Naruto only nodded. Minato frowned and took a thoughtful pose. It explained the recent disappearance, but I never thought that it was Orochimaru's doing, said grimly Minato. Yes it is. After that Orochimaru became one of the most hated nin of the elemental nation, his crime in all the country were horrible, said Naruto. Minato shook his head. What a pity, Orochimaru was certainly the most talented shinobi of Konoha. It's truly a pity. He might be creepy but he's without doubt the greatest genius of Konoha. To fall like that, said quietly Minato. He sighed and looked at Naruto. The Sandaime didn't do anything? Asked Minato intrigued. Naruto only shook his head. With the years, the Sandaime became too soft. He let Orochimaru escape when he cornered him. The Sandaime always had a soft spot for Orochimaru. However, Sarutobi's mistake cost many lives to be lost with Orochimaru's inhuman experimentation. It's something that Sarutobi regretted till the end of his life, said Naruto with a pang of sadness remembering the Sandaime's death to Orochimaru's hands. Minato only frowned. While I think that the issue with Orochimaru deserve reflection, don't you think that your statement on the Sandaime is a little too harsh? Asked Minato. Naruto looked at him and sighed. Unfortunately, the issue with Orochimaru is only one fish in the sea. After the Kyuubi's attack, the Sandaime had to give more power to the council in order to restore more efficiency Konoha, especially the civilian council. Unfortunately, for me, the civilian council hated my gut with a passion. Not being shinobi, they didn't know the purpose of the seal, so they thought that I was the fox incarnate. The only thing that could do Sarutobi was to watch me being scorned and beaten to a daily basis, explained Naruto, trying to steal his feeling in order to not break down in front of his father. Minato clenched his fist as hard as he could, cutting the flesh of his palms. From what Sarutobi told him, the councils, civilian and shinobi alike, were only advisor to the Hokage and couldn't overrule him. Indeed, Konoha was not a democracy. No matter what the council do, the Hokage had always the final word. Minato had to confess that, indeed, Sarutobi wouldn't have the thing to rule over Konoha in a near future. So Naruto, what are you plan from now on? Asked Minato, trying to make forget Naruto about his past, even if it only for one moment. Well, my prime objective for now is to go to Uzu no Kuni, save Kushina-chan and as many people as I can and bring them back to Konoha. Uzu no Kuni will be attacked by a large amount of Iwa nin and Aim nin, explained Naruto with a scowl on his face. Minato head shot up. Aim nin? Why would Salamander Hanzo want to destroy Uzu no Kuni? Asked Minato, really confused. Naruto's face hardened. Salamander Hanzo has been killed since the end of the Second Shinobi War, stated Naruto. Minato's eyes grew wide at this. How? The man that even the Sannin couldn't defeat was killed. He was killed by the heir of the Rakudo Sennin, sage of the Sixth Path, the holder of the legendary Rinnegan, Samsara eyes, stated Naruto with a scowl on his face, remembering that Nagato was the one who took away his godfather Jiraiya, with his Sixth Path of Pain. This time Minato's eyes grew the size of a dinner plate. He knew that the Rakudo Sennin was the builder of the shinobi world and his dojutsu was legendary. His heir must had not been a pushover, he thought. Naruto continued, for the moment this Rinnegan user is not of our concern. The reason for his attack is unknown to me, and to be honest I don't care, but he's attacking one of my most precious people's home and I can't let slide, explained Naruto. Minato nodded and smiled. It's look like that his son inherited his stubbornness. After that I don't know, we will end this war and you'll become the Yondaime leading Konoha to its greatness, said Naruto. Minato looked at him in wonder. What do you mean? You're stronger than me by any means, you should be the Yondaime, said Minato. Naruto only smiled, seeing that his father recognized his strength but shook his head in negative. You will be the Yondaime Hokage. Don't worry, for me I'll take upon the mantle of the Godime or Rokudaime, said Naruto. The soon-to-be Yondaime looked at his son in wonder. What do you mean? I'm 2 years older than you, you'll be as old as me and you won't be able to take the title, stated Minato. Naruto flinched a little. Kyuubi made his presence known. Kid, you didn't tell him? Asked Kyuubi with his eyebrow raised. Naruto sweated a little. I guess I kinda forgot, said Naruto while inwardly scratching his head in embarrassment. Kyuubi only sweat dropped at his friend's carefree attitude. One day you'll forget your head, aho idiot, said Kyuubi. Naruto only laughed nervously. Naruto looked at his father and scratched the back of his head nervously. Well, san about that. Being a Jinchuriki offer me a much longer lifespan than a normal human, explained Naruto. Minato's eyebrows shot up in surprise. He glared at his son sending the message explain. Naruto sighed and began to explain. Technically the moment Kyuubi was sealed inside me our souls were bonded together. meaning that as long as one of us is alive the other is alive as well, but kill one of us and you kill the other. I also gained some trait from the demons, even if, in a sense, I'm still human, explained Naruto. Minato frowned a little. What are those traits? Asked Minato. Naruto flushed a little and a blush crept to his cheeks. Well, the mating ritual is one of them, said nervously Naruto. Minato grinned lecherously at his son. Mating ritual, huh? Care to explain, Sochi? Asked Minato, clearly amused. Naruto glared at his father. I think you hang out with Ero-sensei too much too, san, said Naruto. Minato only scowled. But to answers you, the mating ritual take place when I mate with a woman. By demon's law, when I'm marking her as a mate, our souls are intertwined, a mental link is established between us and she'll gain my lifespan, so even if I'm bound to lose all those that I care about, I'll still keep my mate, explained Naruto, finishing with a sigh. Minato sighed as well. The life of a Jinchuriki was truly complicated. I understand, son. Simply said Minato, when another question popped in his head. By the way, you said that when Kushina-san died you awakened something called Mangekyo Sharingan, kaleidoscope copy wheel eye, what is it? Inquired Minato. Naruto took a breath. Well, you must know that the Sharingan is a very particular dojutsu that was given to Uchiha Madara and the few Uchiha that was with him, by none other than the Kyuubi no Kitsune himself, stated Naruto. Minato choked his own saliva and coughed several times while Kyuubi in Naruto's mindscape only scowled. Not the best thing that I did, mumbled the demon fox. Naruto silently agreed with his nine-tailed friend. You mean that the Sharingan has demonic source? Asked Minato, flabbergasted. Naruto only nodded. As I was saying, the Sharingan can mutate when you are suggested to a great mental trauma, for example you see someone precious to you die. Naruto paused a moment, letting the information sink in. When this is happening, the Sharingan mutate and become the Mangekyo Sharingan, said Naruto. He closed his eyes. When he reopened them, Minato gasped. The iris of his eyes became black, his pupils weren't blue but red and its shape changed in a 9-pronged star. With the Mangekyo Sharingan I gained 3 ability, Tsukuyomi, Lunar Lore, which cast a powerful genjutsu and can't be removed. Amaterasu, Heavenly Light, which cast powerful black flame that burned for 7 days straight, and Susanoo, Spirit of the Storm God, which is the ultimate defense technique, finished Naruto. Minato had to pick up his jaw from the ground. He knew that the Sharingan was a powerful tool, but it was really insane. Too bad that the cost for this power is very high. Unfortunately, an overly use of the Mangekyo Sharingan make the user slowly goes blind. The strain put on the eyes is nearly insane, stated Naruto. Minato's eyes grew wide. Are you? Asked Minato. Don't worry too, san. I don't use the Mangekyo Sharingan too much, and when I use it the Kyuubi fix the damage caused to my eyes, so I won't go blind anytime soon, explained Naruto with a smile. Minato sighed in relief. He will be damned if his son ended his shinobi career so soon. The two of them sat in a comfortable silence who seemed to last many hours. Suddenly Minato remembered something that he was dying to ask to Naruto. Naruto, about the elemental Rasengan, you said earlier that only the fire and wind element were possible, care to explain? Asked Minato, eager to try to learn it. Naruto only smiled at his father's nearly euphoric face. In fact, only the fire element and the wind element are malleable enough to be able to be infused in the Rasengan. The Raiden element create a magnetic field that make the Rasengan highly unstable. I nearly blew up my arm when I tried it, said Naruto, shuddering at the memory while Minato flinched. The Suiden element make the Rasengan less powerful. It's useful only if you want to incapacitate your opponent. Minato nodded in understanding. Finally the Doden, well, I think I don't even need to explain why you can't infuse it, stated Naruto, earning a snicker from Minato. Well, that's interesting. I assume that you can only infuse the Rasengan with one of your affinities. Naruto only nodded. Well, I guess I could take a shot after all. I have affinities to Raiden and Kaden, explaining Minato. Naruto pondered a moment and nodded in agreement. Yes, I think that could be interesting. If I remember right, Ero-sensei had done it. He created the Kaden Koen Rasengan Fire Release Fire Spiraling Sphere. It took him 1 month to complete it, while I made my Futon Rasengan in 1 week, said proudly Naruto. Minato pouted. That's not fair, it took me 3 years to create the Rasengan, said desperately Minato. Naruto laughed at his father's expense. Minato only pouted harder. Ma, don't be like that too, san. I'm sure that you'll take the grasp really quickly. I think it's pretty late. We should go to sleep and begin the training tomorrow, suggested Naruto. Minato nodded. The two bid their goodbye and walked to their respective room. The next day, Minato groggily opened his eyes. Immediately after he opened his eyes they were assaulted by the sun's light. He only groaned and blinked trying to adjust his eyesight to the light. "TCH, fucking sun," thought Minato before his nose was assaulted by the smell of grilled bacon. He stood up, put a white t-shirt and black shirt. He opened his door and moved down the stair only to find Naruto in the kitchen with the breakfast on the table. Minato smiled. He clearly forgot what it was to live with someone else. He walked to the kitchen and greeted his son. Naruto turned and greeted his father as well. The two sat up and began to eat their meal. When the two blonde finished they retreated to their respective room to take a shower and put their Jonin attire. The two met up in the backyard. Minato wore his normal Jonin attire while Naruto wore his usual cloth. The only difference is that he wore his Jonin vest underneath his trench coat devoid of any kanji. "So, Sochi-sensei, where we begin?" asked Minato with a hint of humor at the sensei part. Naruto snorted but turned into his "sensei" mode. "Well, you certainly mastered your Kaden manipulation, right?" Minato nodded. "Well, in truth it's not really complicated. Just concentrate your fire element in the Rasengan and let it flow through the chakra sphere. However, don't let it slip or it will blow up in your face." Ero-sensei was nearly burned when he tried it, explained Naruto. Minato absorbed all the information and let a shudder at the end. He made a mental note to be extremely cautious. Minato formed a Rasengan and began to infuse it with fire chakra. Faint wisp of fire could be seen going through the ball of energy. The fire grew more and more and soon all the core of the ball was covered of fire. Naruto could only stare in awe. His father in his first try, done what him and Jiraiya had done in several days. If Naruto had any doubt about his father being a genius among the genius, now he had none. Suddenly the Rasengan began to throb and pulse with energy. Naruto widened his eyes in fear and yelled at his father. "To-san, dispel the Rasengan now," shouted Naruto, startling his father, who disengaged the Rasengan, but because of Naruto's scream he lost control of the Rasengan. The remains of the energy blow up in Minato's face, sending him backward. Naruto's eyes widened in fear and rushed to his father's side. He knelt next to him and searched for injuries. He only found slight burn on his hand and face but nothing serious. Naruto sighed in relief. Minato somewhat regained his composure and grinned sheepishly at his son. "Well, now I know why you said don't let it slip," said Minato while nursing his burns. Naruto only grinned and helped his father to stood up. "So To-san, ready for another round?" asked Naruto with a smirk on his smiled and nodded. The two of them continued their training for hours. After many failed attempts, Naruto had to use the Shozen no Jutsu, mystical palm technique, on his father to avoid him being called a banana split. After 6 hours of training, Minato tried a last time to infuse his fire chakra. Again wisp of fire was seen in the ball. The fire grew more and more and soon surrounded the entire sphere of chakra. Minato looked at his Rasengan and nodded. His technique was stable. He turned around and slammed his technique into a tree, shouting, "Kaden, Koen Rasengan." The technique ground the tree before it exploded, sending flame and smoke everywhere. When the smoke cleared, Minato and Naruto had to pick up their jaws from the ground. Indeed, where previously stood a 10-foot tree, now stood a 5-foot wide crater. "Well shit, he did in 6 hours what took Ero-sensei 1 month and 1 week for me with 100 of Kage Bunshin," thought Naruto in awe in front of his father's overwhelming skills. Minato looked proudly at his doing, turned and looked smugly at Naruto. "Look like I set up a new record, huh, Naruto?" said Minato with a cozy smirk. Naruto snarled at his father. When he was about to retort, a dark-haired female Anbu sunshined in the garden. Naruto was mildly surprised to see that the woman could enter without activate the seals that were placed around the mansion. "Minato-san, Hokage-sama request yours and your brother presence," said the female Anbu with a soft voice. Minato looked at her 1 second and smiled. "Okay, Sayuri-chan, tell him that we'll be here shortly," said Minato. Naruto froze. Did he heard it correctly? This Anbu was his mother. He was so shoved in his thought that he didn't notice that the Anbu already left. Minato put a reassuring hand on his son's shoulder and smiled at him. "Let's go the Hokage Tower, Naruto. We'll discuss about your mother after the meeting with the Hokage," said softly Minato. Naruto merely nodded, not trusting his voice at the moment. Minato released him and vanished in a yellow flash. Naruto vanished also in yellow flash. At the Hokage Tower, Sarutobi Hiruzen, the Sandaime Hokage, sat behind his desk with a frown on his face. After Naruto's arrival, the council convoked Sarutobi to demand who was the man that looked like Namikaze Minato. The Sandaime told them that Naruto was Minato's half-brother, from the same father, but from a different mother. He told them that Naruto knew both the Hiraishin no Jutsu and the Rasengan. Needless to say that the council was ecstatic about meeting the young man. However, Sarutobi knew about Naruto's past and that the council, particularly the civilian, were responsible for his mistreatment in his childhood. Also, words leaked out that the Hiraishin no Jutsu was an artificial Kekkei Genkei that could only be used by the Namikaze blood, and several clan already planned arranged marriage to gain the Hiraishin and an extent knowledge of Fuinjutsu. Hiruzen was snapped from his musing by two flash. When Sarutobi looked up, he found the two blonde Namikaze looking at him. Namikaze Minato and Namikaze Naruto report Hokage-sama, stated Minato in his professional tone. Sarutobi nodded and eyed them carefully. I called you both here because the council had gotten words of Naruto's arrival to Konoha and they want to meet both of you, said Sarutobi. The two Namikaze groaned. Naruto openly scowled. He knew that he had to confront the village council, but he didn't expect it to be so soon. Also, it seemed that word leaked out that the Hiraishin no Jutsu was an artificial Kekkei Genkei and several clan planned arranged marriage for the both of you, said Hiruzen with a frown on his face. Minato's scowl deepened while Naruto's eyes narrowed dangerously, before an evil smile appeared on his face, sending shiver down the spine of the two other men. Well, if this fucker think they can turn us into breeding factory, they'll have an unpleasant surprise, said Naruto with a predator smiled. Naruto, you won't kill them, right? Asked Minato, staring at Naruto with slight fear, who smirked at him. Don't worry, I won't kill them. Yet, stated Naruto. The Sandaime sighed and leaned in his chair. Naruto, the council will want to know who was your mother. Also, you can't hide forever the fact that you possess the Sharingan, stated the Sandaime. Naruto adopted a thoughtful pose. It was indeed something that he needed to take care. He pondered a moment before an idea popped in his mind. Hokage-sama, do you have any female Uchiha that went missing in action 20 years ago? Asked Naruto. Sarutobi pondered a moment before opening one drawer from his desk. He took a scroll, opened it and scanned it. A moment later a grin appeared on his face. Here we are. Uchiha Satsuki went during a mission to Kika Island 21 years ago, said Sarutobi. Naruto grinned. Then that settled it. As for how I know both two-san technique, let's just say that the principle was a family heirloom and that we completed it our own way, stated Naruto, sending an apologetic look to his father, who mouthed a "Don't worry," at him. Very well. I have faith in both you that you will settle this the best way possible, stated Sarutobi, who stood up and left the room to the council chamber with Minato and Naruto on his tail. At the council chamber, the Konoha's village council is divided in two major parts. One is the civilian part that gather the wealthiest civilian from Konoha. They could only vote in civilian matter. The other is the shinobi part that gather all the clan head from the shinobi clan of Konoha. The Akamaiki, Inazuka, Yamanaka, Kurama, Aburame, Nara, Hyuga and Uchiha are part of the council. Several Jonins take part to the session, as well as the ANBUs and Oinen's commanders. The council is led by the elders Mitokado Homura, Utatane Kaharu, who are Sarutobi's old teammates, Danzo the commander of the root, or Anbu, and the Hokage himself. The chamber was silent, waiting for the Hokage and the two men that the council wanted to see. The door opened and three figures walked in the room. The members of the room snapped from their musing and looked at the three newcomer. They recognized the Hokage, who sat on his chair between his two former teammates, followed by none other than Namikaze Minato, one the most powerful Jonin that Konoha ever produced. They looked at the last figure and guessed that it was Namikaze Naruto, Minato's half-brother and rumored to be at the same caliber than his brother. Sarutobi cleared his throat. I hereby declare this session open. Like the council requested, I brought Namikaze Minato, elite Jonin of Konohagakure no Sato, and Namikaze Naruto, newly appointed Jonin, stated Sarutobi. Naruto meanwhile analyzed carefully the room and frowned, recognizing several head in the civilian council. Most of them were his most adamant detractor in the future. His frown deepened when his eyes landed on Hyuga Hiyashi. The man in the future tried to enforce a political marriage between him and his eldest daughter Hinata. Of course Hinata was ecstatic about that. She was betrothed to her long-time crush, but that wasn't reciprocate. Naruto knew for a long time Hinata's feeling for him, but he knew as well that this crush turned literally to the obsession, and each time that Naruto hanged out with a woman, Hinata went systemically in a killing spree. After that, she was interned in the hospital for mental issue. His eyes scanned the shinobi council, recognizing several clan head: Akamichi Choza, Nara Shikaku, Yamanaka Inoichi, Aburame Shibi, He didn't recognize the Inuzuka clan head, but he supposed that he was Inuzuka Sume's husband who died during the Kyuubi's attack. He also didn't recognize the Kurama clan head but supposed as well that he was Yakumo's father. His eyes landed on the last clan head and he openly scowled. Uchiha Fugaku, a prick among the prick and the stereotype of Kekkei Genkai user who think that his bloodline is the best and is Kami's gift. Naruto smirked at the irony how far from the truth he was. Unfortunately, that wasn't the only reason for Naruto to hate Uchiha Fugaku. The other reason was Uchiha Makoto. He knew that their marriage was only political, but he was incredibly unfaithful to his wife. Kushina was one of his target and tried to get in her pants. Too bad Kushina was not the kind of woman that get raped without a fight. After that, let's just say that Fugaku couldn't get in anyone's pant. For Makoto, granted he could at least treat her with respect, but no, he treated her worse than trash, obliging her to do shameful things for his own twisted pleasure. He was maybe his uncle, but he won't let that continue. How many times did he console Makoto because Fugaku picked on her? He knew that Itachi was already born and was 5 years old, but it doesn't matter. He made a silent vow to save these two from the prick's grasp, and if Sasuke won't be born because of that, well, there will be one asshole less in Konoha. Naruto snapped from his musing when one of the councilmen stood straight and smiled at him. Naruto inwardly snarled, granted these fucker haven't done anything to him yet, but they were the epitome of the hypocrisy. In the name of the Konoha's village council, I would like to welcome Namikaze Naruto to Konoha, said the councilman. Naruto sneered inwardly at him, but kept the poker face. I thank you, councilman, said simply Naruto while bowing his head slightly. Another councilman stood up and looked at Naruto. Namikaze-san, it was brought to the council's attention that you hail from Numa no Kuni, it's true? Asked the councilman. Naruto only nodded. The councilman frowned. It's that so? So how do you know both the Hiraishin and the Rasengan that are both techniques from Konoha? Inquired the councilman. Naruto narrowed his eyes at the man who took a step back under the glare of the blonde. First of all, both Rasengan and the Hiraishin are not Konoha's techniques, they were brought to Konoha by Nisan. As for how I know both of them, yes, I come from Numa no Kuni. The idea was developed by our father who left a scroll to the both of us and we completed it our own ways, said Naruto rather harshly. It was partially right after all, he developed the Hiraishin with his father's scroll. The members of the council frowned. One of them stood up. Please Namikaze-san, calm down. We weren't trying to steal technique that come from the Namikaze family, but we were trying to understand how you learned it, seeing that your brother created both of them, said sagely a councilwoman. Naruto looked at her. Yes, I understand, I'm sorry for my outburst, stated Naruto. The member of the council nodded their head in understanding. Mitokado Homura stood up and asked the 1 million worth question. Namikaze-san, it's said that the Hiraishin is an artificial Kekkei Genkai that can only be used by someone from your blood, is that true? Asked the man. This time it's Minato that narrowed his eyes and responded. Yes, Homura-sama, it's true, retorted Minato. Meanwhile, Hyuga Hiashi was scheming in his head. With a Kekkei Genkai, the two Namikazes were possibly subject to the CRA, Clan Restoration Act. He already knew that Namikaze Minato was dating Uchiha Sayuri, Uchiha Fugaku's younger sister. He couldn't let the Hiraishin fall under the Uchiha's grasp. If he could arrange a marriage between one of them with a female Hyuga, then the Hyuga could become the most powerful clan of the elemental country. He decided to try his luck. He stood up and looked at the member of the council. If that's the case, then, under the Nadime's law, I request a vote for both Namikaze Minato and Namikaze Naruto to be put under the CRA, stated Hiashi while smirking inwardly when he saw that a little more than the majorities agreed with him. The Hiraishin was for him. The Hokage and Minato frowned. It was what they feared. Naruto meanwhile only smirked. Then I hear, began Hiashi. Can you tell me something, Hiashi-san? Interrupted Naruto. Hiashi frowned but nodded. Since when Konohagakure no Sato became a democracy? This question startled the majorities of the council. One of them voiced it. What are you saying, Namikaze-san? The village council was always here even under the Sodime and the Nadime. We rule over this village with the Hokage, said the man like it was a normal matter. Naruto looked amused by the man's idiocy. Last time I checked, it was stipulated in Konoha's constitution that the village council were only the Hokage's advisor. Only the Hokage had the power to enforce the CRA on someone and not its council. Isn't that right, Hokage-sama? When Naruto finished, the entire room was silent. Each member of the council stared with their jaws on the ground. Sarutobi mentally whistled. It wasn't every day that someone could shut up the council. He took a mock thinking pose and nodded. Indeed, the Shadaime told me himself that the council were only the advisor of the Hokage, but for the CRA the decision is to the Hokage. It seems that I was too lenient these last years with the council and I intend to correct this, stated Sarutobi. The usual stoic Hyuga Hiyashi stood up brutally and shouted in outrage. Hokage-sama, you can't possibly be serious. The village council always took its decision for Konoha's sake, shouted the man. Naruto snorted. Hiyashi glared murderously at him. Yeah right, and trying to obtain the Hiraishin for the Hyuga clan is really for Konoha's sake, what integrity, I'm really impressed, said Naruto with each words dripping in sarcasm. Many members of the council looked surprised that Hiyashi could do something like that, but after they thought of it they weren't really surprised. Hiyashi knew he was caught. He was mad, and the fact that Fugaku looked smugly at him with a look that said "fuck you," didn't help to light up his mood. Hiyashi glared hard at Naruto, activating his Byakugan trying to intimidate Naruto. However, this visibly didn't work. Hiyashi continued to glare at him and looked at his chakra coils. His eyes widened at what he saw. Not counting the fact that his chakra coil were 3 times larger than a cage-level shinobi, he saw that a second source of red chakra was present in his system. Naruto-san, why do you have 2 sources of chakra in your body? Said Hiyashi, dropping the honorific. Many council members looked at him like he'd grown a second head. Sarutobi cursed inwardly. If the fact that Naruto was a Jinchuriki was known, it could become troublesome. However, this is Minato that brought an end to the matter. Hiyashi-san, it's a shinobi way to have trick under their sleeves. I remember you that Naruto is, like myself, a seal master, explained Minato. The other member of the room nodded while Hiyashi growled. So the Namikaze family won't take the CRA? Asked a random councilman. The 2 Namikaze looked at each other for a moment and turned to look at the room. When the hell froze? Exclaimed the 2 at unison, much to the council's chagrin. Nara Shikaku, that was silent until now, frowned. He knew that something fishy was up, a second source of chakra. He tempered in his memory, trying to remember where he saw such matter. His eyes widened in realization. Naruto was a Jinchuriki, that explained his second source of chakra. Shikaku had a slight frown on his face. He could tell to the council, but for the moment Konoha needed Naruto's strength. He would look the guy and see what he was up. Well, is that all the council wanted to know? Asked Sarutobi. Many members, still sore about the blow that they received, merely nodded. Uchiha Fugaku, that was silent until now, decided to make his presence known. Actually, Hokage-sama, I've a proposition, stated Fugaku. Sarutobi raised an eyebrow and motioned him to continue. I'm sure that everyone here wonder what are Naruto-san's skill, so why don't we test him? Inquired Fugaku. Naruto frowned a little. Sorry Uchiha-san, but you won't be able to copy my techniques, said Naruto. Fugaku narrowed his eyes, but remained cool. That wasn't my purpose, Namikaze-san. I just want to test your skill in a real battle that will be seen by the entire village. After all, if you'll fight with us, we would want to know your skill, explained Fugaku, earning a nod from the several people. It was logical. It's a very good idea, Fugaku-san, but do you have an idea on who will be his opponent? Asked the Hokage, actually thrilled by the idea. Fugaku grinned. Why not Namikaze Minato? Asked Fugaku in a not so innocent tone. Several people gasped at the idea, but indeed it was a good idea. Only Minato could actually give Naruto a run for his money. Sarutobi looked at the 2 blondes. What do you think, you two? Asked the Sandame. The 2 of them looked at each other for a moment before a large grin appeared on their face. We accept, exclaimed the 2 at unison. Sarutobi chuckled. They were really father and son. Very well, the match will be held in 1 week. If this is all, then I call to an end this meeting, said Sarutobi while the rest of the council scattered grumbling. At the Hokage office. Well, that went well, said Minato. Naruto and Sarutobi looked at him. If we forget the fact that they nearly transformed us in breeding factory. Yes, that went rather well, retorted Naruto, earning a chuckle from Sarutobi and Minato. Naruto, I noted during the meeting that you were scowling at Uchiha Fugaku. He is your uncle, right? Why this animosity? Asked Sarutobi. Naruto snarled and proceeded to tell everything about Uchiha Fugaku and his treatment towards his wife Uchiha Makoto. Needless to say that Minato was pissed beyond belief. He knew Makoto because she was Sayuri's best friend. Sarutobi frowned. He really wanted to help the woman, but unfortunately he didn't have anything to say in clan matter, furthermore when it involved the clan head's family. What can we do? Asked Minato. Naruto sighed. For now, nothing. However, I'll find something to free her and Itachi. This boy has the potential to become one of the greatest shinobi that Konoha ever produced, and I don't want his mind twisted by the Uchiha pride," explained Naruto. Sarutobi and Minato nodded. They could have faith in Naruto and they knew it. "Naruto, about your mother," began Minato but was cut off by Naruto. "Yes, I know and I want to meet her. However, we won't tell her that I'm her son for the moment. Truth to be told, I already have too many things to think about and I don't want to have a headache," explained Naruto. Minato frowned but nodded nonetheless. He could understand that. An idea struck Naruto and smiled. "So what about the three us go out and eat some ramen?" "My treat," said happily Naruto. The two older men smiled and nodded. "We would love to, Naruto. It's said that a restaurant called Ichiraku Ramen serve the best ramen of all Konoha," said Minato. Naruto froze and looked at his father with stars in his eyes. "You mean that Ichiraku is already here?" asked Naruto. Minato only nodded, but quickly regretted it when Naruto grabbed the two men by their arms and dragged them to the restaurant shouting "ramen." 1 week later. 1 week have passed since the council meeting and Naruto couldn't be happier. Indeed, during this week he could get to know further his father and had light spar with him. The two of them also worked further on the Kaden, Koen Rasengan. After Naruto told Minato how the futon, Rasenshuriken was created, Minato tried as well. After 4 days of try, Minato finally created the Kaden, Taiyo Rasengan fire release, solar spiraling sphere. The power of the technique, while slightly less powerful than the futon, Rasenshuriken, was not to be underrated. Indeed, with that technique Minato totally vaporized a Doden, Doryu Joheiki earth release, rampart of flowing soil, leaving only a wide crater behind. Unfortunately, like the Rasenshuriken, the drawback made Minato's arm useless for 2 days, more if it wasn't for Naruto's enhanced Shosen no Jutsu. Needless to say that this technique was rated S-ranked Kinjutsu and Minato agreed to not use it unless he mastered it. During this week, Naruto also met his long-lost mother. When he first saw her, he told to himself that the photo didn't make her justice. She was even more beautiful than on the photo. She was the typical Uchiha female with angular face, rather short dark hair that stopped to her shoulder blade, lean figure, well-toned body and onyx eyes. At first Naruto was very nervous. He feared that his mother was rather stuck up like all the Uchiha, but this apprehension was quickly forgotten. In fact, his mother was someone that you could get along very quickly and she was very funny, ironic for an Uchiha. Needless to say that the two of them hit pretty well, even if she didn't know that he was her son. The relationship between Minato and Sayuri greatly improved too. The two of them were rarely seen without the other. After Minato's injuries due to the Kaden, Taiyo Rasengan, the two of them grew even more closer when Sayuri nursed Minato, and this night the two of them lost their virginity. Unfortunately for them, they forgot to put the Nametsu Fuin privacy seal, and Naruto's prankster instinct kicked in and teased the two without remorse, earning him a "foxy hunting" throughout Konoha by Minato and Sayuri. During this week Naruto also tried to summon his dragon. He feared that returning to the past nullified the contract between them. He left Konoha with Minato and summoned Ryujin, the boss of the dragon summon, a 10 feet black dragon with 7 wings on its back. The boss recognized immediately his summoner and was quite happy to see that he was alright. Naruto asked if the contract was still valid and much to his relief Ryujin nodded, saying that since Naruto still had the summon scroll then all the dragons gained the memories from its contract. Naruto presented Minato to Ryujin, who was honored to meet the current Toad summoner. The three of them chatted for several hours before Ryujin returned to the summon realm. The day of the fight between Minato and Naruto had come and all Konoha was present. The stunt with the council spread like a disease throughout the village and the view on the matter were varied. Several old prunes and members of the council were pissed at Naruto and Minato. Because of them they lost a lot of power and they blamed them for that. The other were rather impressed by the young man. He come from another village and less than 2 days after his arrival he put the village council in its place. A large crowd was gathered at the Konoha stadium. They were waiting for the two shinobi. They were rather hasty to see the famous Konoha no Kuroi Senko in action and his rumored brother. In the stand were gathered several Jonins, Chunins and Genins. The clan head were also here. Even 2 of the Densetsu no Sanin, Jiraiya and Orochimaru, came back to Konoha to see the showdown. Jiraiya was rather surprised when he learned that Minato had a brother, so he came back to Konoha to see what was going on. Orochimaru learned that the Hiraishin was an artificial Kekkei Genkei, so he came back to study the matter. Back in the VIP stand we found Uchiha Fugaku, he knew that his sister had taken a step up with her relationship with Namikaze Minato, and that pleased him. At first he didn't want his sister to date a clan-less shinobi even if he was strong, but that changed when he learned that the Hiraishin was an artificial Kekkei Genkai. With that, the Uchiha could obtain the Hiraishin, and the children that Minato and Sayuri could produce would have limitless potential, especially when the children is a Jinchuriki. To his right was his younger sister Uchiha Sayuri. She was rather surprised and suspicious when her brother told her that he approved her relationship with the Namikaze. At first he was very reluctant and tried to dissuade her to date Minato, but after the council meeting he told her that it was okay. She discovered the reason behind this change when Minato told her the fact that the Hiraishin was a Kekkei Genkai leaked out. She immediately understood, and she was rather pissed that her own brother didn't think of her other than a breeding factory. Needless to say that her esteem for her brother dropped drastically. Not that it was high at the beginning. To Sayuri's right sat Uchiha Makoto with Uchiha Itachi on her lap. Makoto was the epitome of the Uchiha beauty with well-defined feature, angular jaw, long dark hair that fell down to her lower back. Itachi wore already his emotionless mask, whom he dropped only alone with his mother. His black hair were tied in a small ponytail. The crowd was snapped from its musing when two yellow flash appeared on the middle of the field. Here stood Namikaze Minato and Namikaze Naruto in all their glory. The crowd cheered at the two shinobi, but a screech could be heard among the crowd. "Go, go, Minato-sama, kick this loser SS!" screeched a pink-haired woman with green eyes. Everybody in the stadium sweat dropped at the woman. Naruto recognized the woman as Haruno Yukina, Haruno Sakura's mother. The two were so much alike, it was scary, and he briefly wondered if the fangirlism was a hereditary disease. The Sandaime sighed and stood up. "People of Konoha, you had been gathered here to attend to the match between Namikaze Minato and Namikaze Naruto." The crowd cheered loudly, but before the pink-haired woman could screech, she was silenced by a senbon in her neck, courtesy of a certain black-haired Nara Yoshino. Many thanked silently the Nara woman. "The rules are simple. No killing are allowed. You may use all the weapon that you want," explained the Hokage, earning a nod from the two shinobi. "Kid, I know that you have more chakra than 3 kage, but will you need my chakra?" asked Kyubi. Naruto scoffed. "Kyubi, it's a spar, not a deathmatch," said Naruto. Kyubi grumbled and returned to his beauty sleep. "Begin," shouted Sarutobi. Minato took a taijutsu stance, while Naruto took a horse stance and formed the ram, seal. Spark of electricity ran through his body. His hairs and trench coat flapped in the growing wind, showing his tight turtleneck shirt that pronounced his ripped muscle, making more than one female in the crowd very hot under the collar. After a moment his chakra exploded and formed a pillar of blue chakra around him. The ki and energy could be felt throughout the village. Many shinobi sweated under the pressure while several civilians already fainted. The chakra receded and Naruto stood straight. He was surrounded by a blue glow of chakra. Dragon's wings spread from his back, making many people gasp at the display. "Shall we begin, Nisan?" asked Naruto. Minato sweated slightly under the pressure but kept the cool mask. When Naruto activated his Shiroi Renge no Ryu, Minato had won though at the moment. "Oh shit, this will be violent," thought Minato. Truth to his thought, Naruto vanished, leaving only an after image and a crater where he previously stood, startling the crowd. He reappeared behind Minato and launched a horizontal kick aiming for the older Namikaze's head, but Minato ducked, twisted his body aiming a kick to Naruto's chin, but connected with nothing as Naruto had already vanished. Naruto reappeared above Minato sending a hammer kick, but Minato rolled on the floor avoiding the kick, who shattered the ground. Minato stood up and vanished with a burst of pure speed. He reappeared next to Naruto and tried to punch him in the jaw, only to have his punch blocked by Naruto's forearm. The two parted away and charged at each other at blinding speed. The crowd watched speechless at the display of power that the two showed, and only the Hokage, Elite Jonin, the Uchiha and the Hyuga could follow the two shinobi's movement. Uchiha Fugaku scowled. Naruto was far more powerful than anticipated and he couldn't copy the chakra molding for his Shiroi Renge no Ryu. Something blocked the sight Sharingan and Fugaku was pissed that someone could counter his prized dojutsu. Back to the combat. Naruto just kicked Minato in the chin, sending him in the air. He made some hand seals and shouted, "Raiden! Soryu no Ikazuki, lightning release, twins dragons lightning." Electricity gathered around Naruto and two dragons made of lightning appeared beside him. The two dragons launched themselves to Minato, who cursed loudly. He took a 3-pronged kunai and launched it on the ground. Minato vanished in a yellow flash. He reappeared on the ground only to avoid a punch from Naruto. Minato twisted his body and kneed Naruto to the gut, sending him backward. Not wanting to let Naruto rest, Minato made several hand seals and shouted, Kaden, Karyu Enden, Fire Release, Fire Dragon Flame Missile. He exhaled a large fire dragon from his mouth and launched it to Naruto. Naruto twisted his body and landed on his feet. He looked ahead, finding a fire dragon howling toward him. Naruto cursed and made some hand seals and shouted, Suiden, Sujinheki, Water Release, Water Encampment Wall. Water appeared from nowhere and formed a barrier around Naruto. The fire dragon collided with the wall only for the two technique to cancel each other, sending hot steam everywhere. To the stand everyone were gobsmacked. Naruto pulled a Suiden technique without source of water nearby. The only one that could do it was the Nadaime Hokage. The steam cleared, showing that Minato had a kunai at Naruto's throat. Minato was panting slightly while Naruto sweated a little. Minato narrowed his eyes at Naruto. That was impressive, but this technique had a massive flaw that cost you your victory, said Minato. Several council members smiled smugly. Nobody could defeat a shinobi that was trained in Konoha. Oh, how wrong they were. Don't you have anything to say? Asked sternly Minato, pressing furthermore the kunai to Naruto's skin. Naruto smiled and looked at his father. He opened his mouth and said, boom. Naruto glowed. Minato widened his eyes and tried to activate his Hiraishin no Jutsu, but too late. Naruto exploded, sending Minato to the wall, crashing on it, leaving a crater on the wall. Minato struggled on his feet and shook his head, trying to keep his balance. His cloth were worn out, and one sleeve was ripped. He looked ahead, finding his son looking at him, his arm crossed on his chest and his breath slightly erratic. Bunshin Daibakua, clone great explosion. Do you think that I use jutsu without knowing their flaw, Ni-san? Asked Naruto, his voice barely containing his amusement. Minato grumbled something like "smartass" and struggled to his feet. He looked at Naruto and smirked. Don't you think it's time to stop the warm-up and go to the main dish? Asked Minato. Several people gasped that was only the warm-up. What the hell? Meanwhile Jiraiya looked smugly at his student. So Minato, you will finally release it. I admit that your brother is impressive, thought the old pervert. Minato placed his right hand on his chest just above his heart and said, Fuinjutsu, Chinatsu Fuin Kane, Sealing Technique, Suppression Seal deactivating. Minato's chakra level rocketed and he was shoved in a ball of chakra. The chakra receded and Minato vanished in the thin air, reappearing behind Naruto, kicking him in the back, sending him to the ground. Naruto spun his body and landed on his fore. His shinobi reflex screamed at him to roll, and it's what he did, avoiding a hammer kick from his father. The stream of the battle was reversed as Minato began his onslaught on Naruto, who narrowly avoided each blow. Minato stopped, made hand seals and shouted, Raiden, Reiko Nami no Jutsu, lightning style, lightning wave technique. Horizontal wave of lightning speeded towards Naruto, who frowned. Naruto made the necessary hand seals and shouted, Futon, Chakra Daitapa, wind release, enhanced great breakthrough. He thrust his hand forward, releasing a destructive vortex of wind, destroying the landscape. The two attack collided, but the wind attack, being elementally stronger and more powerful, overpowered the lightning attack and continued toward Minato, who couldn't avoid totally the blow and was rocketed backward. Not wanting to let his father escape, Naruto flashed through a series of hand seal and shouted, Suiden, Suiryu no Soze no Jutsu, water release, army of water dragon technique. A dozen of middle-sized water dragon appeared from the thin air and speeded towards Minato, who narrowly avoided three of them, but the fourth stuck him in the back. He was rocketed by the others, who struck him at the same time, sending him in the wall again. The crowd winced at the shock. That must hurt. Jiraiya had his jaw to the ground. His prized student that alone had reversed the odds of the war was being violated by his brother. What the hell? Minato pulled himself from the wall. He looked far worse than 20 minutes ago. His clothes were ripped at many spots. He had many cut that bled badly. Naruto, while better, had for his money too. His trench coat were ruined. He had several bruises but no cut. The two stared at each other, panting heavily. So, how do we end this? Senjutsu. Sound good? Asked Minato between his erratic breath. Naruto grinned. You're on, said Naruto. Jiraiya openly gasped. Minato, stop it, you can't use the senjutsu in your state, shouted Jiraiya, trying to not have his student killed. Minato looked at him and gave him a thumb up. Jiraiya snarled but stayed quiet. Naruto and Minato bit their thumb, made several hand seal and shouted, Kuchio's no Jutsu, invocation technique. At unison, 3 small puffs of smoke could be seen on the field. 2 on Minato's side and 1 on Naruto's side. The smoke on Minato's side cleared and 2 small toad could be seen. One had a white beard and humongous white eyebrows, the other had black hair. The 2 looked at Minato and widened their eyes. Minato-chan, what happened? You look like you went through hell, asked the black-haired toad, clearly worried. Minato chuckled. It's almost that. Fukusaku-sama, Shima-sama, I need your help to defeat my relative who can also use senjutsu, said Minato, pointing at Naruto. The 2 elder toad looked at Naruto and their eyes narrowed when they saw a little puff of smoke next to him. The smoke cleared and their eyes widened to the size of a dinner plate at what Naruto summoned. When the smoke cleared, stood a small white dragon with a long neck, a long tail, and 2 rather large wings for its size. The mini dragon turned its attention to Naruto and smiled at him. Yo, Naruto, said the dragon in a childish voice. Naruto returned the smile. Greetings Shiro-sama, said Naruto, bowing his head slightly. The stadium was silent before a screech of kawaii startled the entire male population. Indeed, all the female population was struggling to not come down to the field and squeeze to the death the cute little thing. Even the not-so-stoic 2 Uchiha females had trouble to refrain the urge. Meanwhile, the 2 elder toads stared shocked at the dragon. Shiro-sama, is that you? Asked Fukusaku. Shiro looked at him and smiled. Hey Fukusaku-chan, Shima-chan, it's been a long time, said happily Shiro. What are you doing here, Shiro-sama? Asked Shima. Well, I was summoned by Naruto, and by judging by where we are I think it's to fight you, stated Shiro. All the blood was drained from Fukusaku and Shima's face. You're saying that this boy is the holder of the sacred dragon contract? Asked Fukusaku in a disbelieving tone. The white dragon grinned. Yup, and I hope that you won't run. It's been a long time since Naruto last used the Ryu Senjutsu and I was bored, stated Shiro. The 2 elder toad paled even more. Up to the stand everybody stared, wondering why the toad were this scared of the cute little dragon. Several clans snickered, thinking that the dragon summon were not as strong as the toad. Oh, wrong they were. The 2 elder toad looked at each other and nodded. They jumped on Minato's shoulder and merged with him. His cut closed, his eyes were surrounded by orange mark and his eyes became yellow with a horizontal slit. Naruto and Shiro looked at each other and nodded. White flame began to erupt from Shiro, whose body became ethereal. Shiro was absorbed by Naruto's body, who began to glow white. He closed his eyes and when he reopened them they weren't blue anymore but yellow with a vertical slit. The crowd and Minato nearly had a heart attack when the ethereal figure of a 9-winged white dragon appeared behind Naruto and roared to the heaven. Naruto smirked. Let's end this, said Naruto. Minato only nodded. The 2 of them flashed through a series of hand seals. Senpo, Gomon 5 guard of the west gates, shouted Minato, who spat a large mass of oil ignited by a kaiden from Shima and boosted by a futon from Fukusaku, creating an humongous blast of fire speeding toward Naruto, who's finished his own hand seal. Ryuten, Shinryu no Akari, dragon release, Wrath of the Dragon God, shouted Naruto, before a tremendous 11-feet dragon made of chakra appeared and roared to the heaven before speeding toward the blazing inferno. When the 2 attack collided, a blinding flash of light could be seen and a tremendous explosion rocketing even Konoha's foundation could be heard. A gigantic smoke mushroom rose above Konoha. When the smoke cleared, everyone's eyes bulged out from their socket. Indeed, where stood previously the field stood now a giant crater. The 2 fighters were nowhere to be seen. Sarutobi sighed inwardly. He thanked himself to have put a Kekai barrier all around the field, or the entire zone could have been blew up by the explosion. A cough snapped everyone from their shock. They looked at the field and saw Minato on his knees, panting and coughing very hard. The 2 elder toad had already left. Minato looked around trying to look for his son. When he felt a distortion at his throat, he looked up and saw his son staring at him with a futon, K's no Soto wind release, sword of wind, at his throat and panting heavily. Do you yield? Asked Naruto. Minato merely nodded and collapsed on the ground. Sarutobi snapped from his stupor. Winner! Namikaze Naruto! Yelled Sarutobi as Naruto collapsed as well. The stadium erupted in a thunder of cheer and clap. Sayuri was now extremely worried for her boyfriend and Sunshine near him. Among the crowd a certain Hyuga clan head was scheming. All this power. If the Hyuga could have this power, we could rule over Konoha and even the world, thought Hiyashi as the medic took Minato and Naruto to the hospital. Kukuku, Namikaze Naruto, you are truly an interesting individual. I can't wait to experiment on you, were the thought of our favorite snake pedophile. Why can't I copy these technique? Who are you, Namikaze Naruto? You who beat the legendary Konoha no Kuroi Senko without even using the Haraishin, thought Uchiha Fugaku with a scowl on his face. That man beat Minato-san. Who could have thought that? Also he's very hand. No, you can't think that, you are already married. But, thought Uchiha Makoto as she watched Naruto. 2 weeks later, chaos that all that can be described, bodies scattered among the ground, building in flame, scream of agony. That was the scene in front of Uzumaki Kushina, whose the blue eyes were moistened as she looked at her former home. They were attacked without warning, hundreds of AIM nin and Iowa nin flowed throughout the country, they were outmatched, many of her comrades fell on the battlefield. She herself tried to contain the enemy, but nothing could do it. Today was the day of the fall of Uzu no Kuni. She was snapped from her stupor by her subordinate Aoi Kasumi that appeared and knelt in front of her. Kushina-sama, all the civilians were evacuated to the Alpha Point, also all the remaining ninja gather there, reported Kasumi. Kushina merely nodded and looked at her. We're also moving. Kasumi, gather the survivor, we leave in 1 hour. Commanded Kushina. Kasumi nodded and shunshined in a whirlpool. Kushina turned to leave, she glanced over her shoulder to look a last time at her home and a last tears roll on her cheek. Farewell, Uzu no Kuni, thought Kushina before vanishing in a small tornado. What she didn't know at that moment, it's that she was bound to return to this place, but not alone.